These are like Japanese samurai swords. This could be bad. This could be really bad. Have you never heard about the Muramasa cursed swords?
No, I haven't.
Oh, what? Tell us about that.
Okay,
That shit, yeah.
all right. Well, let's talk about it a little bit. The spirituality and the swordsmanship have always been inextricably linked in their practice in Japanese culture. After all, Bushido, which is the art of swordsmanship, is lauded as one of the most revered practices of the Zen arts. There's many of these, and generally when we think of these, there's the big seven there. That includes like archery, flower arranging, calligraphy, anime, etc., amongst others. Through disciplined repetition, this ingrains a reflexory state into the swordsman, allowing their actions to exist in a state of mushin no shin, or mind without mind.
Mushin notion.
Mushin no shin. There was a Zen master named Takuan Soho,
Motion lotion.
who was quoted as saying,
That's perfect.
he was quoted as saying, "The mind must always be in the state of flowing, for when it stops anywhere, that means the flow is interrupted, and it is in this interruption that it is injurious to the well-being of the mind. And in the case of the swordsman, it means death." End quote. So these sacred philosophies are even translated into the process of the blacksmith when they're forging a blade. Swordsmith, they employed ritualized practices in their workshops, including prayer and purification on a daily basis. So the soul of the smith is then imbued into these deadly creations, and his every action could be interpreted as a religious act. And with that in mind, many scholars, they consider Muramasa Sengo to be perhaps the second greatest swordsmith of all time that ever lived in Japan.
So this sword has an extra sensory dimension. It exists in this bloodthirsty plane, the physical plane. It's got a meta mental state of its own where it's trying to kill people.
It has a spirit. It has a fighting spirit
Intent.
or a religious
Where did they
state.
get the spirits? Are they human spirits or are they from another place?
It's from the swordsmith
valid-
themselves.
valid-
Oh, really? So
Yes.
they give a part of their soul
Themselves
into it.
into it.
Damn.
Yes. Muramasa Sengo, he was considered to be perhaps the second greatest swordsmith to have ever lived in Japan, which his works were only eclipsed by that of Masamune Goro or Soshu. Muramasa, he lived during the Muromachi period in the 14th to 16th centuries. His earliest known works were seen to have appeared around 1501, but his school that he established continued for 2 centuries. But his own personal works were seen to go on as late as the end of the 16th century in the Ise province, which is south central Japan, close to where Edo or Tokyo is now. So rumors and legends, they surround the life and the works of Muramasa Sengo. For starters, he was extremely feared by all of his peers and those in the community around him. He was reputed to be completely insane, with mood swings that lended themselves into violent outbursts.
What could go
He
wrong?
would injure people around him, no matter who it was.
Whoa. Okay.
A small character flaw.
But he was also considered to be a great craftsman. His swords were known for their sharpness. They were prized for how strong and sharp they were. And it was also reputed that he would obsessively pray over them while he was forging them for them to be, quote-unquote, great destroyers. Not a great combo. So-
Yeah, but it's great for like the Imperial Army of Japan.
If you want to win.
Yeah.
Well,
Like, come on.
We're going to use swords and God.
We'll take
And
what we can
What
get.
else do you need?
Why wouldn't you want God in your corner?
everybody
yeah.
has God
Well,
in their
every,
corner.
every
Quote.
single war that's
Every
ever been
team.
fought were by people that thought they had God in their corner.
That is
That's
true,
how
yeah.
war works.
Yeah, that's true.
Now we understand.
Yeah, but not everyone had an insane swordsman like just toiling away in the
Razor
forge
sharp
or whatever, just making
steel.
razor sharp destroyers.
And that's exactly how the legend goes. It said that his madness and his bloodlust are tempered into the very steel that he wrought.
Yes.
So that these swords became cursed with this unquenchable thirst for death. And this is evident with all the tales that arose from these blades. That they would impel their masters into berserker fits in the midst of battle. That their wielders, that they would hear the calling of the blades in the night for satisfaction. And that they would be incensed to commit murder to quiet them.
I feel like I smell a metal song coming on. Like we need
somewhere.
to like,
Somewhere.
or just
It's
like an
about-
entire project.
I mean,
right? Like-
no, there's an entire metal song happening while
Right.
he's talking in the ether, waiting to coalesce.
Can't you just hear it in the background the whole time?
Yeah.
He's like telling the story.
Gaiju vs. Toddler presents the Muramasa Blades. a sword, it's gonna suck your soul.
And then this little whippoorwill just little calls out, and then soul sucking.
Right into it. We all were hearing it.
Yeah.
We all heard
Yeah.
it. We all
I
heard
just
it.
had to sing it.
It was uncanny.
I'm sorry.
Right
It is
into it.
also
Should be in a
rumored
can.
that these blades, they must shed blood before being sheathed back in their scabbards, or the demand may fall upon the head of the owner, driving them to commit suicide. And yet, if these blades were treated correctly and they were appeased, their master would be blessed with swordsman skills of a preternatural kind. They would become stronger, faster, impervious to damage or immune to pain, and just be the ultimate warrior.
Hell yeah.
Thank you.
brother.
That was Macho Man, not the Ultimate Warrior, but go ahead.
But then, the cost of this was high. Many of these swords would eventually turn on their masters, injuring them or causing the wielder to attack friends and family as well as foe when in the thrall of the sword's evil nature. There are also many stories of owners of Muramasa blades being consumed by madness, and perhaps they ended their own lives in order to escape them as a last resort.
You ever wonder how much of that is just like they were the owner of this sword, so clearly they had to do a lot of killing, and then it was just a guy like at the end of his life, like, man, I've killed like 60 people with this thing. Like, I've killed a lot. Like, maybe I should just kind of stop doing that.
And then I can will this to my son. He's going to make way more off the sword. When he
Right,
hears, like,
exactly.
The sword made
The sword
my dad
killed
kill
Yeah,
himself.
exactly. Spooky sword.
I smell
a million yen.
Yeah, I smell a Darren Aronofsky movie. So these infamous accounts, when combined with the exquisite craftsmanship of these swords, made the demand for Muramasa blades very high, and especially when it came to those who opposed the rule of the Tokugawa shogunate. This was also known as the Edo period, which is now the capital Tokyo. This was the last incarnation of the feudal system in Japan. It was established in 1603 by Tokugawa Ieyasu, and it ended with the Meiji Restoration in 1868. So, as the story goes, in 1535, Kiyoyasu, grandfather to Ieyasu, he was struck down, cut in half by his retainer who had been trapped in a murderous trance.
Christ.
Abe Masatoyo.
Really?
And in this case, your retainer would be like your overlord,
Your master. So
Right, okay.
samurais were employed by the retainer.
Correct.
And if one
Nothing
was...
to do with your dental appliance.
No,
Right,
not
no.
at all. Yeah. Oh, that would be much more
Retainer
He
went
was
nuts,
almost
sliced me
murdered by
right
his
in half,
retainer,
bro.
but he dropped it into the trash.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I don't think they had teeth back then.
No, teeth didn't come until way later.
They just didn't have retainers for
They
this.
didn't have
Listen
teeth.
to the mini-sode. They'll tell you when we got teeth.
And so this retainer that cut him down was using a blade that was forged by Muramasa Sengo. And then 10 years later, in 1545, Matsudaira Hirotada, Ieyasu's father, he was also attacked and killed by his retainer, Iwamatsu Hachiya, who wielded none other than a Muramasa blade.
Damn it, are you kidding me?
There are other reports, though, that he may have been murdered at the hands of his vassals in 1549.
What is that? What does that
Also-
What's a
mean?
vassal?
Vassal, and
like
you know,
your people.
when you're a feudal lord, you have vassals.
Your
They're
feudal
like
people.
serfs. They're
Oh.
the people.
Oh,
you're
okay.
underlings.
The people that you
Yeah.
get when you become a feudal lord. Like,
Yeah,
those are
when
my people
when
right
people
now.
say my people will call your people, those
That's
are
who
those
they mean.
people,
Those
the
are the
vassals.
vassals.
Yeah, you call
Oh,
them.
vassals,
Yeah,
of
we got it.
course.
Not
Yes.
a thing that runs
And
through
there's
your
going
arms
to
and
be
legs.
there's going to be a good number of people that said, "Wait a minute, what's a serf?"
Yeah, okay.
Same
It's
thing.
like when you're at the
Everybody's
beach.
going
and, like,
surfing.
Exactly. Right.
And you're hanging 10.
But then the story continues on
Boy, that's
throughout
impressive.
his family, and it just there was purporting rumors that perhaps the Tokugawa family itself had become cursed by the blades of Muramasa. So Ieyasu himself was injured badly by his own wakizashi that he wore. Wakizashi is a short samurai blade as opposed to the katana, the full long blade.
When they got the two cool ones
They had the
crossed.
two. That was
Oh.
actually, you were known,
Means you
you were
got
a
it
proper
going on.
samurai if you
Right.
had the two blades.
Otherwise, you're just fronting.
You just
Yeah,
front.
you're just
Right.
trying to
Well,
play.
samurai blades were a precious thing. They could cost as much as an entire farm.
Yeah.
But you can't.
Yeah.
But you can't grow anything on them.
Well, no, except for death.
Yeah.
That's just really bad
And that's
family
not really
planning.
a growth of
Yeah.
any kind. No.
Well, son, we have an entire farm, or we can give you the sword. What do you think?
I'll take the sword,
There you go. On to your world, son.
Any self-respecting kid would be like, whoa, badass.
Look at the mirror sheen and the maker's mark.
The choice will always be sword.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the modern day. Would you like to own this bank or this bitchin' Camaro?
It's a 92? Hell yeah.
Muramasa Camaro. All right.
There we go.
But, again, this blade was also of a Muramasa make. In 1579, Ieyasu's son, Nobuyasu, He was suspected of an assassination plot of Oda Nobunaga, one of the two major ruling warlords of the time, and he was sentenced to perform seppuku, or ritualistic suicide. This is the practice of committing harikiri, where you basically disembowel yourself with a sword in a horizontal cut, followed by a vertical cut.
Really?
But as was the custom, if you are not unable to finish the task, you have a second ready with a katana to behead you.
Yep.
Right. Which is right neighborly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Put me out of my misery.
Yeah.
It means they went through some iterations of the process before they're like, you know what, we should have another dude here.
Just in case.
It's like, another guy would make this way cleaner.
This ceremony's taking way too long.
The one guy just goes, "Kill me!" And his assistant goes, "I don't know, man. I don't know if
should
that's
somebody
Yeah.
Do that is that
Really?
God, I mean, this seems really bad. I mean, I understand why we're doing this, but oh God, we really need, can we have a meeting about this on Thursday? I mean, that sounds.
Evaluate this process.
moment is agony.
Yeah, I mean, it just. I mean, I liked the whole idea of the Harry Carey,
very
but this seems a
ceremonial.
little messy.
Let's form a committee. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, this should be good.
Get some plastic.
But as Nobuyasu was unable to finish the ritual, his second performed the beheading, and of course was wielding that of a Muramasa blade.
Oh my.
Of course it was.
These things are pretty badass.
The stories continue.
There's
Yeah.
more?
There are more. So after the defeat of Ishido and Konishi in Kicho, Ieyasu heard tell of one of his generals at this decisive battle putting the blade of his own Yara through the head of another general. That's basically a Japanese spear.
Okay.
Man.
And he
Gonna
heard
leave a
that this
mark.
blade was so sharp, he wanted to examine it himself. And inevitably, he cut himself on it and was... The tale goes that he said out loud, "This can surely be none other than a Muramasa blade." And when examined, indeed it was.
These things are
Giant
everywhere.
bore, the maker's mark of
They're
Muramasa
literally
His
blade.
last
everywhere.
words were, "No, son of a."
Him and
So
Homer.
how much of this was just a guy who's really good at making swords and made a lot of swords, and then Japanese feudal lords being dicks and killing their own
Yeah.
vassals with the swords?
But for one person's family,
I
and
guess
all of their
that makes
friends
sense.
to be struck down by these same blades,
one line of-
even the
It's
last
kinda
straw
weird.
was his own wife was executed with a Muramasa blade as well, and that
Wow.
led to him banning all Muramasa blades. He would not allow any of his samurai to carry them, and in the city they were banned under the penalty of death.
Wow.
That's crazy.
So dudes would walk up to you and say, "Let me see your sword."
Yeah, they would examine the maker's mark on the hilt
clubs
of
do
the
you
blade.
go to?
Right,
Show
if
me
you were
your
carrying
dagger.
swords, that you could be stopped.
That's a very efficient club cast. Tell me where it is.
Yeah.
Let me see your sword. I want to see the maker's mark on that sword.
All right, sure.
Could it be considered
Okay.
that to use one of those blades would be sympathy for the it's so sharp and so wonderful? If you're going to have to be beheaded by one, or you might as well.
That makes
have
sense.
Yeah,
In
that
other
would
words,
make-
it would be a tip of the hat to you. Otherwise, I use a big butter knife.
Yeah, exactly.
Tip of the hat.
It's probably super heavy and sharp as a razor blade.
You see the head floating off and twirling around, going, "Why, thank you. That was wonderful, delightful."
In fact, I can still see myself. This is where I can see my house from here.
Did I lose weight? This is great.
I'm tethered.
Well, that brings up actually on the other end of the spectrum, perhaps considered the greatest sword maker in Japan was Masamune Goro, whose blades almost had the opposite effect. He was considered almost a saint. If you did not have ill intent and someone tried to strike you with one of his blades, it was reported that it would not cut you.
Nice.
There's a famous
Friendly
story
blades.
between
It bruise you.
a Muramasa blade and a Masamune blade, both being tipped upside down and submerged into a river, and they were trying to judge whose blade was of the finer quality. And all of the leaves that ran through the river were attracted to and ran through Muramasa's blade, and yet they were deflected by Masamune's blades. But they judged Masamune's blade to be the superior because it had no intent to kill on its own.
Or that blade's a pussy.
That's what I'm thinking. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Maybe the
I mean,
blade
let's
doesn't
admit it.
need to kill things to
No,
prove
you're
how
a
badass
blade,
it is.
bro.
I'm
Yeah.
sharp.
Obviously,
I'm a
it's a
sharp
blade.
man, and I'm
Takes
trying to
the
be
higher
sharp as I
road.
can.
Exactly.
Seriously.
I want a blade that only cuts when it wants to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
How you wake up in a bad morning and you're not going to cut? I need you to cut today.
Yeah. With my fucking luck, I get like a chef's knife that's a vegan.
Yeah.
You know?
Right, yeah,
It's
exactly.
like, those ribs, fuck you.
You know, just massage him.
It just curves up and goes,
Nah.
Why, you squirrely.
You moody knife, you.
Don't make me sharpen you.
I'm just saying, you don't want to pick up a weird, spooky sword.
Yeah.
If you don't know where it came from,
that's
especially
true.
if
Well, we
it's
do
of a
know where it
Japanese
came
maker.
from. That's what's fucked up.
It came from Greaves.